Right, I make that 2:30 by my clock. So good afternoon, everyone. And firstly, welcome to Pension Awareness Week. If you weren't aware yourself already, this week, this year, is a push by the pensions industry, whether there are distributors, product providers, anyone who's involved in the pensions industry. It's an initiative to strive to get more engagement with members, whether they're in the public sector or the private sector. So at ABC Wise, we thought what better way to actually get involved with Pension Awareness Week than to run a webinar looking at your annual benefit statement, among other things. So hence the title, What Does Your Pension Statement Tell You? My name's Jonathan Kempson. I'm one of the workplace implementation managers at ABC Wise, and prior to joining them in 2018, I was 20 years with the Prudential. And as you know, Norfolk Pension Fund have chosen the Prudential as their provider of local government AVCs, additional voluntary contributions. And of course, what's happened since then is that a lot of employers, or your employers, from Norfolk, as you're on this webinar, have introduced the latest version of AVCs, and they are salary sacrifice shared cost AVCs, or shared cost AVCs for short. We will touch on them a bit later, but first and foremost, we want to talk about the annual benefit statement. Now, before we do that, some housekeeping. Everything today is factual information only. It doesn't constitute individual financial advice, and everything's based upon our understanding of current taxation legislation and scheme rules. So what are we going to cover today? Well, first and foremost, we want to help you understand your local government pension scheme statement. What we're not going to do is go through it line by line. That would be particularly dry, I think, is a diplomatic language if we were to do that. What I would say, though, actually looking at your statement from Norfolk Pension Fund, it's definitely one of the more digestible ones. I mean, everyone contains the same information. It's how it's presented. So compliments to anyone who's on this from Norfolk Pension Fund. I think you're definitely in the Premier League when it comes to LGPS pension statements. But of course, what we all want to know is, well, how much are you going to get and when? And there are lots of boxes, there's lots and lots of data in there, and it has to be in there. It has to be there, technically correct. Whether you need to understand each and every box, well, I don't think necessarily you do need to. Really, you just need to have faith in the number, the grand total, as I said, how much and when, and boil it down to its simple elements. And then, of course, if those numbers, whatever they are, aren't sufficient, well, maybe you're trying to retire before your normal pension age, and we'll discuss what that is, then you owe it to yourself to find out, well, what options are there within the local government pension scheme I have to try and improve things. And you're never too late to take advantage of these things, but we will touch on those, which obviously do include shared cost ABCs a bit further on in the session. So let's go straight into a section of your LGPS statement. So the graphics here should be familiar to you, because of course now you're all sort of online. Gone are the days of paper, I think, unless you specifically request a paper statement. So you'll log into your pensions portal, self-service, and you'll be able to see your annual benefit statement. And what it does, obviously, the first section is all about, personal details, who you are, the sort of obvious stuff there. The first sort of key set of data I think members should be looking at is what benefits you've actually built up, and it's always to the same date each year. It's to the 31st of March each year. So obviously the most recent statement is backdated. It's backdated to benefits as at the 31st of March this year, 2021. And what it does, quite simply, with your piggy bank logo there, is it puts in, this is the amount of pension you've actually built up at that date in time. Now, as we'll sort of summarize shortly, how you've built up your benefits in the local government pension scheme has changed over the years. It used to be this thing called a final salary pension scheme, and then it morphed in 2014, April 2014, into this thing called the Career Average Revalued Earnings, or the CARE scheme, as it's known. And what that number is in the total annual pension as at the 31st of March 2021 takes that into account. So whatever service you've had with your employer, if you've transferred any other stuff in, any other pension stuff in, then that should all be included in that number. But of course, that number isn't necessarily what you'd get if you'd retired on the 31st of March 2021, because remember, of course, the minimum age for you to take your LGPS benefits is currently 55, okay? And of course, even if you were 55 plus, whatever age you were over 55, that pension benefit which you've built up as at 31st of March 2021 takes no account of any potential reductions, because you also know that if you cash in your local government pension scheme before your normal pension age, and we'll touch on, we will touch on that, before your normal pension age, there will be reductions if you're doing it off your own back. So it's not what you physically would have got on the 31st of March 2021 is my point, but at least it lifts the bonnet and says, well, look, this is what I've got in the engine bay so far. Okay. Now, you'll note next to it, there's that other sort of sack of money there. Not much in that sack because it says zero, doesn't it? Automatic tax-free lump sum. Now, the key word there is automatic. You only get an automatic tax-free lump sum if you had service in one of the final salary sections, which used to be known as the 80th scheme. And I'll summarize this on a separate slide shortly. So this example here, that would tell me that this person wasn't in service before April 2008, because if they were, they would have something in the automatic tax-free lump sum box. And then what it does, we then get into a lot more detail on the right-hand side box there, because of course now everyone's in this career average thing. So it doesn't matter when you joined, look, everyone from April 2014 is in this career average revalued earnings. And it will start to break down, well, okay, this is what you've got under the care section of local government, but then also, what have you got if you're in service before care was in force in April 2014, and those are what we call the final salary years, okay? And there'll be obviously apportioned then, you'll see that towards the bottom, it says total final salary annual pension, and then it says includes the pension at 80ths and the pension at 60ths. So it'll actually break down the final salary sections further, and of course tell you whether you've got this automatic lump sum. So there's the extra detail if you want it, but it's summarized basically very simply and very cleanly, I think, on the left hand side. So that's what I'd be looking at. And if I get my annual benefit statement, right, where am I at the moment? I know I'm not retiring now, but where am I at the moment? Of course, the next key thing I want to look at is, well, if I carry on, what could I be in line for? Because this is when I'm thinking about my retirement, how much and when. Now, it will then put another box that says your normal pension date. So shall we have a chat about that? Normal pension date, normal pension age. It changed when the career average revalued earnings scheme was introduced in April 2014. And now, moving forward, it is the higher of 65 or your state pension age. And of course, your state pension age depends upon your date of birth, doesn't it? You've got to just be aware that for some of you, your normal pension age is higher than 65, it's 66, 67. Now, they will then project what you're on at the moment, and this is another key point. It assumes that you've got no pay rise between now and whenever your normal pension age is. Okay. Now, in reality, of course, we're all expecting some type of pay rise, and those of us who go on to have more responsibility or bigger jobs in LGPS, then in some cases we might expect significant pay rises over the course of a career. So my point is this: when you get the projected pension benefits, if you're quite a long way from retirement, take that number with a pinch of salt, because it hasn't actually got any salary increment included in it. If you're a bit closer to retirement, then in all fairness, that might be pretty realistic, because as we get closer to retirement, normally the salary is pretty static, and you're not going to expect to see much change in your salary. So the forecast might be reasonably accurate. But you'll notice that they actually break down the projected pension on the career average section, and again on the final salary section as well. And if you'd already got an automatic lump sum, that would be forecasted as well. Now, what it will also do, and I don't think I've got this graphic on here, no I haven't, will be when you get to your projected retirement age, your normal pension age, of course it will show you what your standard benefits are, whatever your pension is, and what if any automatic lump sum you've built up in the pension scheme. What it additionally will show you, though, as well, is recognizing the fact that all members can take up to 25% of the capital value of your LGPS benefits back as tax-free cash. So there'll be another sort of calculation which says, well, okay, then you could actually have a maximum lump sum of the 25% number. But then to do that, of course, what you've had to do is to sacrifice some of your annual pension and commute that into tax-free cash. We'll show you another slide on that shortly, but there will be a number there as well. Really important fact here is that if you've had the wisdom to put some extra money aside and you put it in one of these shared cost ABC things, this extra pot of money which you can build up with the Prudential, that is not shown on your annual benefit statement. You get a separate statement from the Prudential, but more than that, when you're looking at the maximum lump sum and commuting some of your LGPS pension, they've taken no account of whether you've got a PRU pot or not. Now, when you have got a PRU pot, the big attraction for LGPS members is that if you cash out that PRU pot at the same time as your main scheme, whenever that is, that PRU pot in its entirety, if it fits inside the 25% number, you could use that as tax-free cash rather than damaging your all-important LGPS pension, okay? But it doesn't show that calculation on your statement. So what I wouldn't want you to think is, oh, I've got my annual benefit statement here from Norfolk Pension Fund. It tells me I can have a maximum lump sum of X, my 25% number. Oh yes, I've also separately been putting some money into one of these shared cost ABC things, and I went to a webinar and someone said I could have that all back as tax-free cash as well. No, that won't be the case, because your ABS has already worked out the maximum 25% without the Prudential pot being factored in. Okay, so just be aware of that. And really, when it comes to the annual benefit statement, those are really among the key things you want to know. How much have I got so far? What am I going to get moving forward? They will also show you how much you've got or tested against something called the lifetime allowance. So all of us can have as many pensions as we like now. So you could be in Norfolk Pension Fund, and you could have 50 private pensions on the go at the same time if you wanted to. But when you add up the value of all those pots, if you go over the lifetime allowance, you can get into punitive tax. That's £1,073,100 for this tax year, and it's been frozen for the next 5 tax years. Now, actually, LGPS is valued quite generously because it's what we call a defined benefit scheme. It's a promise to pay you guaranteed income, and how they value that towards the lifetime allowance is they take the pension and actually multiply it by a factor of 20, whether they think you're going to live 20 years in your retirement. So your £10,000 a year pension is worth 200 grand towards the lifetime allowance. Point is, on your annual benefit statement, it will show you how much your LGPS is towards that, just as a sort of reference piece there. But for me, if I'm getting my annual benefit statement, that's all I really want to know. I want to understand how much I've got under my belt so far. If I carry on doing what I'm doing to my normal pension age, I'm going to get that amount there. But I'm going to be mindful of the fact that that includes no pay rises. And as I said, if I'm further away from my normal pension age, I'm hoping it's going to be more than that. Who knows? But that's the key data there. So to sort of summarize those changes in LGPS over the years, just to be really clear, all of you, it doesn't matter when you joined, all of you from the 1st of April 2014 are in this career average revalued earnings scheme, the CARE scheme. And how that works is that each year you earn your salary, whatever that is. 1/49th of that salary is the amount of pension you've just built up, guaranteed income for your retirement. And then you move on to the next year, whether you get a pay award or not, 1/49th of your salary that year. So you're building up layer or strata of income. That is then revalued by CPI. And that's important because if you've just banked a pension of £200 a year for life, well, if you've still got 10, 15 years until your normal pension age, then of course that £200 in real terms is going to be worth a lot less, isn't it? So that's why they do revalue it by CPI, which is important. So you get to retirement and you'll have so many 49ths revalued by CPI to give you a pension at retirement. Remember, higher of 65 or your state pension age is the normal pension age moving forward. Those of you who got service earlier, though, between April 08 and 2014, so that ran for 6 years, you had the final salary scheme, which was called the 60th years. That's what was mentioned on your statement earlier. So how it worked is that if you work 1 year full-time, you've got 1/60th of whatever your final salary is going to be. And the good news is they kept the link to final salary as at up to today. It didn't freeze as at when this section came to an end on the 31st of March 2014. It didn't freeze the final salary then. It's still got it linked today, which is great. But what is frozen are clearly the number of years and days you've built up under those 6 years. If you've been full-time, you've got 6/60ths of final salary. If you were part-time, they will have prorated down the number of years and days membership you've got, but it's multiplied by the full-time equivalent salary of your position. So that was all about pension. And those of you who've been around a bit longer and you've got service prior to the 31st of March 2008, you're in the other final salary section as well, which was called the 80th years. Exactly the same principle applies. Work full-time 1 year, you've got 1/80th of whatever your final salary is, prorated down if you're part-time. That gave you a pension, so slightly less generous on the pension front, the 80th years, because an 80th isn't as big as a 60th, is it? But the offset with that, of course, was the provision of that automatic tax-free lump sum, which, if you've got any service under the 80th scheme, will be shown on your annual benefit statement, obviously as automatic tax-free cash. So that's how it's all worked out. That's why there are all those boxes in there about career average, final salary. But at the end of the day, all that matters is what the grand total is and when. This is when you financially plan. So if you were sat down with a financial advisor, that meeting would typically revolve around, well, what I want to do first, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, is understand what the pension outlook looks for both of you. So, if you're an LGPS, let's have a look at your annual benefits statement. We can see how much and when. Okay, so we've got what we call the hard facts, which is great. And then, of course, now I'm going to ask you, tell me about yourself. What does retirement look like for you? What do you like to do? When do you want to retire? Now, I'm looking at your annual benefits statement here. It tells me, given your date of birth, that's 67. Do you want to retire when you're 67? And then this is where you start then overlaying what I call the soft facts. And you can do this yourself, actually. Get your annual benefits statement. If you don't want to go at 66, 67, you can use the online portal to get estimates as to earlier ages to understand what the impact of early retirement is, and then start mapping it out yourself. You don't necessarily need an advisor to do it for you, although sometimes obviously it's a lot easier. But for me, that annual benefit statement is a very powerful tool to shape sort of discussions around how much and when, and then more importantly, how you feel about that. What I'm going to do now, actually, before I go any further, is let me just dip in to see whether we've had any questions, and then we can carry on from there. Okay, whoops, unfortunately someone's had some trouble with the audio. Sarah has. I'm sorry about that, Sarah. You won't be able to hear me saying this, will you now? But try and refresh if you can read the text in the chat box. Karen's asked, do we not still automatically get a paper version as well as the online one? I always have in previous years, but I haven't yet had a paper one this year. Now, of course, I'm not from Norfolk Pension Fund, Karen. All I can say is my experience is a lot of them have actually turned off the paper route now. I think you can request a paper copy as well, but the whole point, I'm talking generically here, the whole point of pension funds driving people digitally online is to stop them chopping down the trees as well. So yeah, of course, historically you've had paper. I don't know what the current policy is with Norfolk Pension Fund, in all fairness, unless someone else is listening, wants to type something in the chat box to that effect. But as you say, you've had them in previous years, but not one this year. I mean, I guess if you definitely wanted a paper one, Karen, you can always get in touch with them and get them to pop one in the post for you. And then let's have a look. Eliska's asked, by how much is your pension reduced if you retire early? Great question. It's not a linear thing. I'm going to show you actually a worked example very shortly, actually, Eliska. So, but if you work on between 4 and 5% for each year you want to go early, you start to see when someone says to me, well, I want to retire at 55, which is the earliest, I think, crumbs, you might want to be sitting down when you find out how much you're going to lose in your pension. When you're retiring off your own back, it's a pretty hefty loss you're going to be facing. Okay, got some more questions coming in now. Let's have a look. Lorraine, I think it's more of a comment. Lorraine said, I believe that NPS do also send out the paper version, but they don't arrive until midway through the year. Okay, midway through, is that sort of in a few months' time, I guess, or yeah, okay, well, that's just a comment from Lorraine there. If anyone can throw any further light on that, that would be useful. Suzanne's asked, can you confirm, if I understand correctly, if I say had £20,000 ABC when I chose to retire, that 20k will be taken off the maximum conversion to lump sum from NZC pension to bring it in line with the 25%? Sort of. Now, what on earth do I mean by sort of? Well, how it works, let's deal with this now, is it'd be a slightly different calculation. So those of you who've got AVC pots, it's an extra pot of money with the Peru, yeah? The calculation changes slightly. Overall, you can still only have 25% out as tax-free cash, but you would have your pension from Norfolk, your standard pension, whether you got any automatic lump sum, plus plus the value of whatever your prudential pot is at the point of retirement. You add all three together, if you've got automatic lump sum, all three together, and it's 25% of that number. So my point is actually that annual benefit statement maximum lump sum isn't a correct maximum if you've got a prudential pot, because that pot hasn't been factored in. It'll be 25% of all three. So that sort of makes sense. What we can do, Suzanne, if you've got ABCs and you want to have a chat about, well, what is my limit then? What's my 25%? That's what we can do at ABC Wise. If you get in touch with us with a projected LGPS pension, we can tell you what the maximum ABC you could build up and have all that tax free. So get in touch with us on one-to-one if that's what you want to do. Okay, right. Okay, let's crack on with the rest of the session then, folks. So I've really covered this off, but I just want to sort of add some commentary on here, if you don't mind, because this idea of when you get to retirement, see what a lot of members do is they get close to retirement, they have a look at the annual benefit statement and they say, oh, look, I can have all that out as tax-free cash. Okay, I'm going to lose a few quid off the pension. Well, that's a good idea, isn't it? Well, is it? I would argue it's only a good deal if you're going to die relatively early in your retirement. That's quite a bold statement, isn't it? Why do I think that? Because it's all to do with the commutation rate. So you get to retirement, every pound of pension you throw away, they'll give you £12 in cash as a one-off, win up to the limit of 25%. But what you must recognise, and I'm sure a lot of you do already, is that £1 of income from LGPS is worth its weight in gold. Why? Because, number one, it's guaranteed income for life. So it doesn't matter whether you live to 85, 90, 100 plus, that money is going to be paid year in, year out. Yeah. And here's the next crucial point though, which for me makes it really attractive, that £1, is it's index linked. Every year, that £1 is going to go up by CPI, Consumers Price Index. Now, any of you filled up your car recently, or I had a letter from my electricity provider the other day telling me how the wholesale price of electricity has shot up and we're very sorry, but we've got to pass this cost on to you. And I'm thinking, well, if I'm retired, I know a lot of us have been spending a lot of time at home over this COVID thing, but when we're retired, in theory, we're spending a good chunk of our time at home, won't we? We're going to be spending more on energy bills and things like that. Yeah. So what you want is an index-linked income, folks, and that's what LGPS provides you. It's gone up 20% in the last 10 years. So if I'm going to be around for an average life expectancy, was that the right thing for me to take the quick win in cash? I'm more inclined to do that if, unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to make old bones. I'd be more inclined to do that. But if I'm looking at the value route, given average life expectancy, I'm more likely to probably keep my income. And this is when the really savvy money comes in, because then you get LGPS members who say, well, actually, I want the best of both worlds here. I want to keep that pension because it is guaranteed, index linked, etc., but I still want to grow my lump sum. And that's where you can use your prudential pot to do it. And if it fits in there, you could fill it up to the 25% with your Pru pot. Get the best of both worlds. Let's have a look at the case study then, and this will help Aliska when we are talking about cost of early retirement and things. So we've got Sarah. Let's imagine her state pension age is 67, give her a date of birth. When she gets there, she's on just over 29,600 odd pounds. Pension fund would say, well, okay, when did you join? Let's keep it simple. You've got one year in the 80th scheme. You got 6 years in the 60th scheme, so you must have been full-time over the 60th years to get that. Otherwise, it would have been prorated down. 18 years looking forward, career average section, that's the bulk of your membership, Sarah. 25 years overall, end up on just over 29,000 odd £1,000. That's your annual pension at 67, 14,900 a year, plus a little bit of a lump sum, automatic lump sum, because she's only got 1 year in the 80th. That's why that's relatively modest. Hard facts then. Okay, Sarah, is that enough? Yeah, what do you want to do in your retirement? How much money do you think you need? Does that cut it for you? Yeah. Would you like some more? Very few people will get to retirement and say, do you know what? I've just got too much income in my retirement. I don't know what to do with it. Yeah. Not many people will ever say that when they get to their retirement. So even if you're going through to normal pension age, there'll be tax planning opportunities to boost that. But certainly for those members who want to go early, in other words, before the normal pension age, that's going to be classed as an early retirement. That's it at 67. You want to go 3 years early. How about your pension dropping down to £10,800 odd? Why is that such a big proportionate drop for going just 36 paydays early? It's because early retirement off your own back is a double whammy. What you're now facing is a lack of a loss of accrual because you're missing out on 1/49th, which is quite a big chunk of the pie. And the pension fund are going to reduce it down because they weren't supposed to pay it out until 67. So if you want it now, we're going to reduce it down. So that's how I-49 drops all the way down to 10.8. And that £4,000 is £4,000 a year, and it's only going to get wider with index linking as well. So, could be losing many thousands, depending on how long Sarah lives in her retirement. More importantly, in the right here, right now, if I were Sarah's advisor, I'd be saying, well, why do you want to go at 64? And you open up Pandora's box then in terms of, well, why do we want to retire early? Well, I've had enough of working is normally reason number one. Or it could be, my partner's older and, we've got some plans, we want to get on with things. We know this is not a dress rehearsal, this life thing. And we want to get out there and do what we want to do before, unfortunately, the wheels start coming off as we get a bit older. So there are some very solid reasons why we all want to go a bit earlier. It's whether our financial planning allows us to do that. So £10,800 then, Sarah, talk to me about what your lifestyle looks like if that was your sole source of income. Because you're going to have to wait another 3 years until your state pension kicks in. So what does that mean for you? How do you feel about that? So what you'll find is that those of you who want to go early, then you're going to have a planning need, or very likely to have a planning need, to do some additional financial planning to make it a reality. So what are the options within the scheme? Because there are two in-house options. Number one, you can pay these things called additional pension contributions, APCs, basically buying extra income from Norfolk Pension Fund. So you tell them up front, look, I want to buy extra pension of X, and then they look at your age, your sex, different rates of men and women, and over what period you want to pay for the contract. You can technically do it as a one-off lump sum, but you're going to have to write a big check for that one. Or most people will spread it out over a certain period of time, and they'll give you a quote. Well, okay, if you want to buy £1,000 a year from us, this is what it's going to cost you on a monthly basis. If you're a taxpayer, you'll get tax relief on that, though. And you're buying inflation-linked income. What you're not buying, though, and let's be very clear with this, is joint life income. This income, this extra income, dies with you. It's single life. It's unlike your main scheme, whereby a survivor can get up to 50% of the pension you were enjoying. This extra stuff dies with you. It's not that flexible as well, because they'll tell you what the cost is, X over Y period, and you either pay it or you don't. It's as simple as that. If you want to stop it at any time, well, you can, and they'll pro-rata how much extra pension you built up to that point. But if you want to restart it, then it's a fresh contract, and then it has to be recalculated again. The thing is with APCs is that there's no employer contribution. If you think about your normal main scheme contribution, you pay in wherever you are on the pay scale, percentage of salary. Your employer on average pays about 19% of your salary towards, so they take the lion's share of the cost basis to give you this guaranteed pension for your retirement. With this stuff, you're on your Todd. So when you get your quote back, because you can get a quote from the pension fund, what you're going to do is get your calculator out and then work out how long I've got to live before I get my money back. Equals, on average, at least 15 years in retirement. In some cases longer than that before you even break even. That's why you don't get many members taking out APC contracts. It might be right for that member who's completely risk averse, and come hell or high water, they've got that guaranteed income for retirement. When you actually truly understand the mathematics behind it, you're less likely to do APCs, if you are going to do additional saving, you are far more likely to go down the shared cost ABC route because it's just far more flexible. And as I said, a lot of you will do shared cost ABCs because actually what your intention is to cash out at the same time within the 25%, get the whole thing back tax-free. Who'd have thought that? Pay into a pension pot and get the whole thing back 100% tax-free. Yep, you can do that and leverage your career out of local government to give yourself a much bigger tax-free lump sum at retirement. You don't have to, by the way, you can take it to give you income, but if it's tax-free, it's tax-free. You can then invest that cash to give you income and retain access to the capital. Very flexible shared cost ABCs because you dictate what goes into that a pot with the PRU. It can be as little as £2 a month. It can be for some people as high as 60% of their gross monthly pay or somewhere in between. Because the good news is that when you're on board with those things, you log into your ABC Wise portal and you click amend and you can increase and decrease accordingly. Members like that flexibility for cash flow. Different times of the year, they can turn the gas on if they want or not. The benefit for you as a member is that you will save income tax on it, tax relief, and because it's a shared cost ABC, national insurance savings as well. So a word of what's coming down the pipe if you haven't been watching the news. Clearly from next April, the plan is to put national insurance up again. So you're going to be paying more NI. I didn't know if you know this already, but there's already been some pretty stealthy moves to raise the tax burden already. Did you know that your personal allowance, if you've got a personal allowance, have a look on your pay slip, 1257L is the standard personal allowance. That means you can earn £12,570 before you start paying income tax. Well, did you know that that allowance has now been frozen for the next 5 tax years? So what that means for you and for me is that if any of us get any type of pay award, whether it's in just cost of living or anything, we're going to be paying more income tax because in the next tax years, it's not going to go up. Normally it goes up a little bit each year, but now it won't. So through what we call fiscal drag, that will actually generate billions of pounds more in income tax receipts over the next few years, on top of obviously the national insurance increment, which is going to be coming down the pipe next April as well. So how do I shelter myself to some extent from what is going to be the individual tax burden for all of us from next April will be the highest it's been since effectively after the Second World War. That's the fiscal reality of it. How do you shelter your hard-earned money to a certain extent from that? You put money into a shared cost ABC is the simple answer, because it'll escape HMRC's grasp because it's taken out of your pay slip. What it means then is £100. If you put £100 in the pot on your application, what actually comes out currently is as little as £68 odd if you're a basic rate taxpayer. If you're a 40% taxpayer, it costs you just over £58. It's a bit of a no-brainer really, because if you can turn 68 or 58 into 100, well, on the £68, you made over 46% return on your money before it's even invested. You start to see why people close to retirement will start to even think outside the box how they can fund some pretty heavy contributions into shared cost ABCs. If that means leaning on a savings account, snoozing away, going backwards, I think my parents have got a cash ISA and that provider's just written them to say it's going down to 0.01% interest. Gee, thanks very much. What's inflation running at the moment? Well, even though it did go down a bit, it's above the Bank of England base rate's target of 2%. So how about a negative compounded return on cash? That's why I'm going to be thinking about putting some money into my shared cost ABC so I can get the green arrow. And by the way, I can even put that into a cash account with the Prudential as well. Nothing's 100% guaranteed. You can get back less than what you put in, but Pru's going to have to do a pretty bad job with your money for it not to be worth more than £68 when you get to your retirement. Downside is, of course, no access till minimum age 55, so you're not going to put anything in there. You're going to need access before then. tools we have at AVC Wise to help empower you to build your knowledge, because a lot of people say, well, okay, well, I don't know how much it's going to cost me. Well, actually, if you use the AVC Wise calculator on our website, you can actually punch in your salary, your own tax code as well. It'll do all the maths for you and tell you whatever your amount you want to put in as a gross amount, what the net cost is to you. And it can actually forecast, if you had that invested for 3, 4, 5 years, whatever that term is, potentially what the pot might grow to. We assume net of any prudential annual management charges, which you pay on their funds, a growth rate of 3%. We think that's realistic. It's not, though, if you're in a Pru Cash fund, you won't get 3% with Pru Cash. But whatever your distances from retirement, you can use this Knowledge Hub calculator to actually start to build an idea as to what you could build up in this pot by the time you retire. So do have a look at that on the AVC Wise Knowledge Hub there. Click on the calculator. Further resources after today, we do lots of other webinars, go into a lot more detail on investments and how shared cost AVCs work. We've got the calculator for you. We have some bite-sized videos. And when you're logged in, you can see the frequently answered questions section as well. So there's a wealth of knowledge there. Knowledge around your main scheme. So let's be clear about that. If you've got any queries on your recent annual benefits statement, then the people to go back to are Norfolk Pension Fund, yeah? And you'll do that through your portal, or you can ring them up, yeah? But always remember that the pension fund is reliant on the data sent by your employer to the pension fund to produce your annual benefit statement. So we had a webinar earlier today and someone said, well, it's showing that I've got no benefits under the final salary section, but I've been here since before 2008. So clearly that person is going to go back to their particular pension fund and query what's gone on there. Is it some duff data, or has someone input it wrong into the computer system? If you're after more generic information around LGPS, then lgpsmember.org is a great place to go to, because this has got the A to Z of how LGPS works. It's not bespoke for your personal numbers, but it's a fantastic reference tool on anything to do with LGPS. If you want to talk about things, anything to do with shared cost ABCs, that's what AVC Wise is here for. So we're not here for answering your specifics on your annual benefit statement. That query is taken up directly with the pension fund. If you've got queries around shared costs, how do they work? How do I use this calculator? You talked about this 25% number. Can you work that out for me? What's my maximum ABCs? Yeah, we'd be delighted to chat to you. How do you do that? Various channels: email, live chat, telephone help desk, the Knowledge Hub calculator we talked about. We have our frequently answered questions as well, A to Z on shared cost ABCs. Your portal, by the way, there it is. It's on there, member online, member.Norfolk Pension Fund. Great long URL there. Remember, download these slides, and then you've got this slide here with all the relevant links there. But that's how you go online, basically, if you didn't know so already. And there, of course, is the lgpsmember.org website, which we're just talking about. Right, let's just flick back to any questions and see where we're going to go with that. Now, oh, here's a very good question from Karen. Is there any information about the McLeod judgment will affect those who were in the scheme at the relevant time? Does it mean that you can potentially retire at 60 with no reduction based on your salary at 80ths? So this is almost worth a webinar in its own right, Karen. Look, I will keep this brief because it's pretty complicated. But there was something called the McLeod case. It was to do with started off with I think it was firefighter pension scheme. Basically, it's a discrimination case. There were some protections to allow members to retire early without a reduction in their pension, and basically the bottom line, it was deemed discriminatory, and they've got to sort of unpick it and compensate some people. Now, without going knife and forking all of this stuff, because it is devilishly complicated. They're working through LGPS. Well, what does it mean? What is the financial impact of this judgment? Apparently, it's not going to be as bad as other public sector schemes, but does it mean that you can potentially retire at 60 with no reduction based on your salary? Well, that was something really around. Yeah, you can potentially, because you used to be able to do that under something called the rule of 85. You could go early, and if you had a certain number of years in the pension scheme, you could have that. The bottom line is it's still being worked through at the moment, so there's no final detail on it. It's a complex fix they've got to do. They haven't done it yet. It's in progress, and I'm sure Norfolk Pension Fund will be communicating separately on that particular case. Right, Lindsay's asked. Here's a good one. Here's a cracking question, actually. Are shared cost ABCs good if I'm already over 60? Simple answer. Do you pay tax and NI, Lindsay? If the answer's yes, then you should seriously consider doing shared cost ABCs. No, you're not going to have that money potentially invested with the Prudential that long. But if you think about it, I use that example, basic rate taxpayer, £100 only costs them 68. Well, let's say someone could afford, and they were able to put in £1,000 a month. £1,000 into that pot would only cost the member £680. And if they could take the £1,000 back tax-free, just in 1 month, they've made over 46% return on their money. So even if you were a matter of months away from retirement, you'd want to be all over this like a rash. And if that means you've got to live off your savings account to wind that down, which allows you to pay in much larger sums, anything you can strip out of your pay slip, you're going to save tax and NI on it. It really is as simple as that. Now, what you're not going to see over a shorter period of time is much growth from the PRU, because, ideally you want to have that money invested a long time so it can potentially compound up. But to be honest, you don't really give a hoot about that, because the primary return for someone who's closer to retirement is not compounding. It's the sheer amount of tax and NI you can actually save. So, it's not uncommon, and it depends upon salary levels and, of course, affordability as well. But we will quite regularly see some people putting £2,000 or plus a month into these things as they get close to retirement, because of the tax saving. So I hope that makes sense there. Carol's asked, can we apply to set for ABC online? Yeah, I mean, you could just go onto the ABC Wise website, Carol, and you click on, new, if you're new to this, and fill in your details, and it's all done online, and we set it all up with the PRU on your behalf. So it's really easy. If you get stuck, give ABC Wise a ring. It's the easiest thing to do there. Suzanne asks, what is the retirement grant? In other words, it's the tax-free lump sum, the automatic lump sum. Sometimes people call it a retirement grant. So it's what you've built up as tax-free cash within the local government pension scheme. Maria's then asked, for shared cost ABC's investment options, can your team advise on the best funding option, or do you need to speak to an independent advisor? Yeah, it'd be great if I could say to you, Maria, do you know what? I think you should put all your money into X fund or Y fund. The difficulty is that would be deemed financial advice. We can give you factual information. We can't tell you which individual fund or funds to go into, although we can sort of explain them. What I would say is my best steer for you is to go with your gut reaction in terms of level of risk. Yeah, if you're relatively close to retirement and you're low risk, well, if you put it in a cash fund, you're not going to get any growth, but you're not going to get any real volatility with that. See, the closer you are to retirement, you don't want to put it all in the stock market if the stock market tanks like it did when the COVID thing happened in 2020. A lot of advisors do say to their clients, when you're investing, try and diversify and don't put all your eggs in one basket. So that I encourage people to go into things like multi-asset funds. And within the Norfolk Pension Fund, I think a classic example of a multi-asset fund would be that you've got with profits fund you can go into. I think there's another fund called a discretionary fund. If you have a look on the fund guide, the Prudential Fund Guide, you'll be able to fund guide to options. It gives a wide range of different funds you can go into. So in a nutshell, no, sorry, we can't advise you, but I would say go with your gut reaction. There's nothing wrong at the end of the day, even if you initially went into a cash fund and then sought the advice of someone, and because you can always change where it's invested anyway. But just go with the level of risk you feel comfortable with is my best steer. And then Karen's asked, yeah, no, this is a good question. Are you aware of advisors who are familiar with the LGPS scheme? Yeah, I previously tried to work with an advisor who couldn't say much behind, oh, that's a good fund. I know, it's, if I was living my pension life again, I'd be an IFA in the sense that having the knowledge around LGPS, you're quite right, the vast majority of advisors out there haven't got a Scooby-Doo around it. They'll know high level that it's a defined benefit scheme and it's a good scheme, but I've even seen instances over the years where they've advised them to invest in their own pensions with the advisor and not to have gone in-house and done things like AVCs, which in my opinion is the wrong advice, because of the ability to potentially take it all back as tax-free cash should usurp going externally, because you won't be able to do that with external funds. Yeah, you can always try and find one, Karen. It's easier said than done, as you've found out. They are few and far between, I'm afraid. So you can go on to, there is a website, unbiased.co.uk, put in your home postcode, it comes up with a list of advisors. But I do, agree that if you ask that advisor, what do you know about the local government pension scheme, they'll say, well, that's good. that might be as much as you get out of them. So yeah, not easy to try and track one down, but in fairness, a decent one would then say, well, actually, I don't know about it, but I'm prepared to go away and do some research on that and then come back with some advice. So that's probably going to be, as I say, for a fee-based advisor. But look, I've been dealing with this stuff for many years. For me, things like in-house shared cost AVCs are always the first port of call for trying to increase benefits because of their unique properties compared to any other type of pension. Okay, right, I think that's about it on the question front, folks. It only remains for me to say thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. I hope you got something out of the session, even if it's, well, I'm going to look at that annual benefit statement and start to digest those numbers and think what it actually means for me. What am I going to get at my normal pension age, and do I really want to go through to 66, 67? If I want to go earlier than that, I'm going to jump on the portal and perhaps run some estimates to see what I'm going to get if I go a bit earlier than that, and see what the reduction is. How viable is that? How tax efficient am I being at the moment if I looked at these shared cost ABC things, which my employer does? Because let's be clear, not every employer offers this. The fact that yours do in Norfolk, it's a brilliant benefit, because you can save yourself so much tax and NI, put it back in your own pocket. And if you can do that before you get to retirement, you're going to thank your lucky stars you did it. Trust me. Anyway, thank you very much for your time, and live long and prosper, as they say. Thank you.